I'm grateful to be here, and Shauna, thank you for being such a good friend, and it is, UVU truly is lucky to have you here. So John Richards, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me to get some street credibility first, but I see I've got my LDS ward members here. I've got one of my son's best friends from high school. Where are you at, Ben? Right here. So yeah, and all the people here. It's so fun to see all of you today. Okay, so today we're going to talk about these topics: innovation, creativity, and ideas versus opportunities, and what that all means. But again, I'm going to get some street cred with you first, so that maybe you think maybe I can convince you I know what I'm talking about a little bit. So my career spanned these years as an entrepreneur before I retired. I retired at age 38. I'm going to tell you how that happened, okay? And I actually had a company in Seattle that did yellow pages. And so we became print yellow page publishers when I graduated from BYU. Went back to my hometown of Seattle. And we actually called it, after what was called Neighborhood Telephone Directories, but then we renamed it as a brand, Banana Pages, which seems nutty, crazy. In Seattle, which is gray, why would you name it a tropical fruit? Well, I invented replacing the name Yellow in Yellow Pages with another name because Yellow Pages was so generic. And so what happened was yellow, banana. 99% of people could make that association in our testing, and I launched this, and my 3-year sales goals were hit in 1 year with this brand name. And then I grew the company about 500% in 3 years, and then sold that company and made a little bit of money, which pretty good amount of money, but then I launched the first ever Yellow Pages on the internet and launched that company in 1994 at the dawn of the age of the internet, and then did that, and that got acquired by 3 guys leaving Microsoft. They were Microsoft millionaires, and they wanted to do a white pages, but they learned that Yellow Pages is where the money's at in a directory business, and so they launched InfoSpace. And about 30 days in InfoSpace, they acquired my company. They gave me no cash, only stock in their new company. And I thought at the time, I wonder if I'm making the right decision. Ended up, that was a very wise decision. And I'll show you why in just a little bit. But so I did that, and InfoSpace still exists today. It's a multi-billion-dollar value company. Makes about $600 million a year in revenue or something like that. I haven't followed it for a number of years. I left there in 2001. And it never had any debt. Accumulated about $500 million cash in the bank, and about 3-4 years ago blew that all out in dividends to its shareholders at one time because it wasn't needing that cash for anything. So it's kind of interesting history. But that company still exists today. You can look it up on the stock market and all that. So I was about number 4 at that company, and so we had fun with that. That's my path. Now, here's the experience I had, and I'm kind of starting at the end of the entrepreneurial cycle. The dream of an entrepreneur is to go public. And the reason is because the public pays you much more for your company than anybody else will ever pay you for your company. That's why. Because the public will buy the future and the promise and the hope of the future on the open stock market and just pays you much more than any other buyer would buy your company for. So the experience I had was, I was in InfoSpace, so I want you to think about the stock that I had in this company. So I started my own company and got a bunch of shares in the company by being a founder. And how much do you think I paid for those shares? Okay, time. I actually did put in money. I wrote a check to the company because I think that's a safer, better way. Today we're not going to talk about how to start companies in a better way, but that's a better, safer way than just saying for your time. It's better to write a little check to establish a trail of ownership. But I did. I wrote a $2,500 check to get my stock, and I got 51% of that company, and I had 3 other partners. And so then we did this company, and that eventually got into InfoSpace, of which when we sold that company, we got stock in InfoSpace, no cash, just stock, and sat there with stock. But so effectively, my price was about less than a penny a share. Okay? And then after selling in 1996 to InfoSpace, in December of 98, we went public on the stock market on December 15th, and it went out at $15 a share. And so you can think, why would somebody ever want to be an entrepreneur? Well, first of all, you want to change the world. All I was trying to do was make the Yellow Pages industry go into the future with online Yellow Pages, and I knew I could dominate and change the world. And the funny thing is, when you focus on that, this stuff happens afterwards. When you become a leader, then all this follows. And so the history I had was December 15th, it went out $15 a share. I can still remember watching in our conference room the ticker starting up on our stock. And then we went through 3 stock splits. May of 99, January of 2000, and April of 2000. We had 3 stock splits, which a stock split means you get 2 shares for every share you hold, and the share price gets cut in half. But to make a long story short, the highest point of the stock was in March of 2000 when it closed at $138.50 a share, accounting for all these stock splits. That means from the original $15, it went up to $1,108. Okay, which is about a 7,300% increase from the IPO price. But remember, my price as an entrepreneur wasn't the IPO price. What was it? About a penny a share. So it doesn't take too many shares to make some money as an entrepreneur, right? This is why, if I had any tip for you today, maybe worth your tuition, is I would go find the hottest, coolest company in Utah County that just will give you some shares in the company and ride that up as it goes down this same path. And we've got many companies in Utah County at the beginning of this path right now. It's a renaissance period for this right now. So lots of opportunities. My own son just joined a company this week to jump right at the right moment onto a company like this. And that's one of the best things you can do as a young person. Of course, starting your own company is even better, but if you're going to join somebody else's company, join it when you can maybe get in way up here, not necessarily down here. All right, so with that, after being able to do whatever I wanted and retired at age 38, with the financial independence that kind of thing brings, a lot of people like me become an angel investor. An angel investor is an individual who now takes the money they've made and gives it to other new entrepreneurs to help them get their company started, and they get ownership in those companies, and they try to ride the same train, but with the entrepreneur doing all the hard work, right? And there's lots of angel investors in Utah County. We have multiple angel investors. Shauna knows many of them, and they're all around, and there's tons of money in this world. Never an excuse to fail at entrepreneurship because you can't get the money. If you're not getting the money, it's because your deal is bad. Something's wrong with you, your company, or something. Because every day I know entrepreneurs in this county getting lots of money for their businesses. Okay? So with that, these are the companies I've invested in. I've invested in about 65 in my angel investing career. These are some of them. And you might recognize some of their names. So I was lucky enough to meet Josh and John from Superstats back in 1999 or 2000 when I was still at InfoSpace and became they were one of my first angel investments. I flew down to Utah and came from Seattle and went to Center Street in Provo, and this company called Superstats had a second floor office in a dingy old building, dark painted walls, and Josh James talked me into giving him $110,000. And that was a long time ago. And for the next 4 or 5 years, I thought they were going to die every 3 months. And there were times everybody thought they were going to die every 3 months. But then all of a sudden, they got the right sales team in, and they landed America Online, or AOL, as a big client, and then it never looked back. And we all know the history now. Adobe's here with 1,000 employees. They're building a new building to bring another 1,000 here, and they sold for about $2 billion, that company, and it went public and the whole thing like that. As far as angel investments go, that's a dream, because I made 40 times my money that I put in back on that. So that's kind of one of the reasons. Why in the world would anyone want to be an entrepreneur? Because you get to change the world, and the world rewards you for it way above what you should be rewarded. Because what is an entrepreneur really doing? They're renting your time as a worker. Think of when you work for somebody else. What are they doing? They're renting your time, and let's say they pay you $40 an hour or $20 an hour, and then they take that and they make $400 an hour from your time. Right? That's what they do. It's called arbitrage. And that's what they do. And I sit and think, if they're renting my time, I'm sitting there as if I were you, I'm going, do I want to rent my time to somebody who's going to make 10 times that on my back? Or should I go make that money for myself? That's a question, right? That's a question we all need to ask ourselves. So it's kind of interesting. One thing I've learned, there's been some other great companies here. Some of these companies, Allianz's really on the upswing. Symphonic's already sold. A lot of these have gone out of business and died. Let's see, the fastest I ever lost money was this one, Freeport. Gave $100,000. 30 days later, I went to their office to see how they were doing, and there was yellow tape around the building and all the file cabinets, and nobody was in the office anymore. So I don't know what happened. Anyway. But I have a T-shirt that they gave me when I gave them the $100,000. And when I wear that T-shirt, my wife says, how do you like that T-shirt? I go, it's a nice one. She goes, oh, yeah, it's a real one. How much that cost you? So anyway, she's still teasing me about it. Mercado Partners is interesting. This is an investment fund that started here in the state, and they invested in 7. So you invest in this fund, and they invest in 7 emerging companies. And of the 7 emerging companies they invested in, 3 have gone public and 1 sold for $400 million in 3 years. No fund in the entire United States did better than this fund for the year that this was started. It's amazing. Utah's a great entrepreneurial place. It's amazing what we've got here in this state. So lots of interesting stuff. This is here to tell you the absolute worst investment you can ever make is in an independent movie. It's the #1 guaranteed to lose your money vertical category. I've never met any investor yet who's invested in an independent movie and ever got their money back. And I've been searching for it. I've had many producers, directors, people come try to get me to invest in their movie, and one time I did it. It was this one. This movie came out, the Salt Lake Tribune and the Deseret News gave it 1 star. And it lasted 7 days in the theater and went to DVD and didn't sell very many copies, and we all lost our money. So it's a tough, tough business. All right, enough of that. So with that, let me tell you some of the other things I've done. So Utah Student 25 is the Inc. 500 for student-founded businesses in Utah. What you do is you go and apply there if you're an entrepreneur, put in some data, and then we choose the top 25 ranked on revenue and profits. And every year, so far for the 4 years, it's been the same. 6 universities have the top 25. UVU always has several members of the top 25. UVU is a great, some students here, I don't know if you know about them, but there's some incredible stories out of UVU with student entrepreneurship. And the #1 ranked companies every year have gone on to greatness. And I'm talking about literally they go on and win the Global Student Entrepreneur of the Year. Things like that. That's what's happened here. It's been incredible. The #1 company the first year, 1 year later, after winning #1 ranked student business with about $1 million revenue, they were on a path towards $20 million revenue. And then 3 months later after that, Vivint bought them for a boatload of money. And the 2 founders that hadn't graduated yet became senior vice presidents of Vivint. And one of them right now is heading and leading up Vivint Solar, who's right under Greg Butterfield, who just became head of Vivint Solar. You know Greg Butterfield. He became head of Vivint Solar about 3 weeks ago. And then this student that started that company is right under him, running the whole solar division for Vivint, a 7,000 person company. So some great stuff. Boom Startup, if you haven't heard of an accelerator, and somebody used the word incubator. Incubator is a bad word in today's world because it represents old-fashioned way of incubating companies. Accelerator is the proper word, and actually called a seed accelerator or a mentorship-driven accelerator. The first one ever was Y Combinator in 2003, and they invented a new way to help software and technology companies come out to market. And then Techstars started in 2007. These 2 are globally very famous. Who's heard of Y Combinator or Techstars in here? Okay, just a few of you. If you're studying entrepreneurship and you haven't heard of these 2, you need to read and be, getting on things. Let me tell you the 2 most important websites to read for entrepreneurship today is TechCrunch and Mashable. So TechCrunch.com and Mashable.com are the 2. You should go sign up and have them email you weekly summaries of their headlines. And then you can click on the ones that interest you. And that's the #1 best way to keep up to date on things. But Y Combinator and Techstars, Y Combinator is where Dropbox, Airbnb, and those kind of companies came from. They take in 60 companies a year, and accelerate them. And they right now are doing something like $20 billion in revenue collectively, and tens of billions of dollars of market capitalization value has been created. Techstars is all over the country now, and they proved it could be done outside of Silicon Valley where they started. And they started in Boulder, Colorado. Now they're in Seattle, New York, Boston, Chicago, Austin, Texas, and places like that. And so we started Boom Startup here for Utah, and we're all members of the Global Accelerator Network. You can go to gan.co and see all the accelerators. We were the 7th accelerator patterned after these two to ever start, and there's now 1,200 worldwide. A lot. Most universities that are really getting serious about entrepreneurship are starting their own on-campus accelerator following the best practices from GAN, gan.co. So kind of interesting. When you get into one of these programs, 70% chance of being funded. If you're not in these programs, you have a 3% chance. Isn't that interesting? Because what happens here is they make you more attractive to investors. This year we had 11 companies in Boom Startup. It just ended less than a month ago, and you came for the final day. Did you enjoy it? So 9 of the 11 companies have already been funded. 2 of them got quadruple subscribed, which means they were oversubscribed. They got 4 times more money that people were throwing at them than they wanted to raise. And those 2 are one called Studio. Who's downloaded the Studio app? Anybody in here? You have? Only one? If you haven't seen it, Studio, some people are thinking it's growing twice as fast as Instagram grew in its first month of existence, and it's on fire. And it got incredible. The top investors in Utah and Silicon Valley just invested in it. And another one's called Toot Genomics, which is a software for unlocking the human genome, and as Google Earth is to the planet and allows you to go around and look at the planet in different ways. Toot Genomics graphically lets you look at your human genome and see maybe what diseases you might be in store for later in life, what genes you have, any defects or good genes, all that kind of stuff. Kind of weird, scary kind of, right? You know, insurance companies look at that and don't want to insure you. That's an ethical issue that's coming up. But the software technology is all there to make it happen, and and things are just happening. So those are the kind of companies in Boom Startup, and we're having fun with that. We've had about 6 of the 39 companies die, actually. So, and about 8 of them are flourishing, and the rest of them are all in their growth phase. And that's kind of how it's going right now. Yeah.
Question on that, John. What happens to the founders of those 6 companies that have died? What do they do?
Most often they start another company.
And how do those?
Yeah, that's the hallmark of an entrepreneur, is the minute they have a failure, they start another one.
Okay. So
they don't run back to a job with their tail between their legs. That's kind of it comes out in the research.
Okay.
So one thing about Boom Startup, this is a trend in society right now. This right here is tracking the companies graduating from Y Combinator contrasted to the amount of venture capital activity. Venture capitalists have lost a lot of power in the entrepreneurial world because the power has gone to the entrepreneur. Because it's so inexpensive to start a company today than it was 10 years ago, the entrepreneur is actually in the control seat. If you've got a hot company, you tell them how much money you want and at what valuation. They don't tell you. It's a different world. But you got to have a hot company and you got to be doing a good job. Excellence gets rewarded. So this is just stuff about it. To let you know how it works, we take in about 10 companies every year. We give them $20,000 for 6% of their company, and then they get not $50,000 but $750,000 of in-kind services, a ton of stuff, and they get free rent and a whole bunch of mentoring and all this. And this is an old slide because it's talking about 2013, but we're finished with that season now. This is my family. And just to let you know, I'm a regular person just like you with concerns and worries and all that type of stuff. So that's us, and I have 3 children married, 1 not married. He's in law school in California. If you know any good girls here, let me know. He's 27, still looking. Ben knows him. It's a tough case, isn't it? He's picky and shy, that's the problem. But anyway, okay, we're going to do an exercise now. We're going to talk now about ideas and opportunities. So I would like you to get a piece of paper, and in 30 seconds, I want you to write down all the uses for this object. Okay. What are some uses? First of all, what is this? Okay. What kind of cup? Plastic or paper cup? Okay. So what are some uses? Just raise your hand and shout out some. Tell me what are some uses that you wrote down. Yeah. So you could plant for a plant, okay?
Party hat.
Party hat, okay?
Some sort of container, pen, pencil.
Pen, pencil container.
Drawing canvas.
Drawing canvas, okay?
Donation. Sell lemonade in it.
Huh? Sell lemonade. Lemonade. Who said something else?
Donation cup.
Donation cup.
Shovel or a spade.
Shovel or a spade. Noisemaker, okay?
Fire starter.
Hearing aid. What?
Fire starter.
Fire starter, okay? What else?
Catch a ball. You ever see the game and you put a string on a ball and you...
Yeah, you can do that, okay? Game.
Eye cover. Big nose.
Okay. All right. Anything else? What else?
Hearing end of the phone.
Okay. Hearing end of a phone with a string type of thing. Yeah. Yeah. So they said that here, pens and pencils. That's good. Okay.
Eye cover for protecting your eyes. You have to poke pins or something.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That's good. Who's got some they think's really unique and weird and different? What's the weirdest one? Who's got a weird one?
Mouse trap.
Mouse trap. Okay. What? Put cheese in there and then comes over. Yeah.
Timepiece.
What?
Timepiece.
How-
Hole in the bottom so water drips out. Timer.
Okay. As water drips out for time. Okay.
Bowling pins.
Bowling pins, so you could have 10 of them. You keep them for bowling pins, okay. Anything else? Okay, so we could sit here literally and come up with hundreds, if not thousands of uses for this object. Thinking in different ways about how to use what we might think is a drinking cup. So the question that's arising here is right brain versus left brain thinking. Entrepreneurship requires both. To be excellent in entrepreneurship, you need to be strong in both types of thinking. Now, right brain thinking is divergent thought. It's the ability to create a multitude of original, diverse ideas. Right brain thinking is often associated with creativity. Left brain thinking is convergent thought or reasoning. It's the ability to evaluate multiple ideas and choose the best solution to a problem, often associated with math or engineering. So when you think of some of the great entrepreneurs, why is Bill Gates such a great entrepreneur? And was he? Was he just lucky? Steve Jobs, was he just lucky? It's because they've got both sides of their brains and they've exercised both sides of their brains and they're working for them. And they're able to be creative and at the same time analytical to choose at the moment what's the best way to go. It's very interesting. So, associative thinking, here's Mike Collins from the CEO of the Big Idea Group says, the best inventors are definitely different than your typical MBA or engineer. Their brains are well-trained or naturally disposed to make connections in unnatural ways. This is why not everybody is a fantastic entrepreneur. They haven't exercised or been brought up. Sometimes they've been trained by their family or their friends not to think differently than other people, to conform. And our LDS culture in this county can sometimes teach us to conform, right? And so we got to be careful with that because in business and entrepreneurship, conforming is not good. It's not good. Okay? You got to think in unnatural ways. Now, don't take that to the extreme, right? But you know what I mean. And they have incredible observation skills. They're constantly looking at the world around them and asking why. You know the little 2-year-old? Why? That annoys the mother. You ever had that, Shauna? 2-year-old, remember the 2-year-old stage?
Even the teenagers, right?
Yeah, even the teenager. Why? Incredible observation skills. It's not just one aha day. Steve Jobs just did not come in and think, I'm going to create the Apple computer from just one day woke up and said, I'm going to create the Apple computer. Bill Gates did not just wake up one day and said, I'm going to create MS-DOS. Matter of fact, do you know that he didn't even create MS-DOS? Do you know that Bill Gates licensed it for $50,000 from Jim Patterson of Patterson Laboratories in Seattle? It was called Seattle DOS. And Jim Patterson licensed it to him for $50,000, unlimited worldwide license. And then Bill Gates sold it to IBM for gazillions as a license, and then every other PC clone manufacturer. We wouldn't even know the name of Bill Gates if Jim Patterson hadn't written that software and licensed it to Bill Gates, an 18-year-old. It's amazing. Bill Gates was asking questions. Says, I could take this license thing and satisfy IBM's needs. He put unnatural thinking and put it together. So asking questions all the time. It's just part of who they are. For other people, it's an untapped skill. Steve Jobs said creativity is connecting things. When you ask creative people how they did something, they feel a little guilty because they didn't really do it. They just saw something. That's because they were able to connect experiences they've had and synthesize new things. So they observe and then connect disparate or unnatural connections. It's really something that you can practice. So we have examined how your brain works, and I've suggested that creative thinking involves both sides of the brain. But it's not just about thinking, right? Being creative and innovative is not just about thinking. It's also about doing. So you think different, and then you act different. Now, question the status quo was a big part of coming up with fantastic business ideas. Why do people wear a watch when their cell phones keep perfect time? Who in here wears a watch right now? Raise your hand. Who else, of you that have a watch, keep your hands up. Put your hand down if you don't have a cell phone. Nobody put their hand down. So why do you? And the cell phone keeps way better time than any watch, by the way. Way better time. Why? Why do you wear a watch?
Style.
Okay.
It's less intrusive to look at that than it is to collect.
Oh, I see when you're meeting with me and you go like this. You ever done this trick? Stretched out so you can see your watch and nobody notices, but I notice every time you do it when you're meeting with me. Okay. Why don't movie theaters sell soundtracks as they exit the theaters? They want to sell soundtracks to movies, right? Why wouldn't they sell it when people love the movie they're walking out? Why do they wait till they have to go find it online or in a store somewhere? Why do people leave the caps off dry markers and ruin them? Ever had that happen here at UVU? It's annoying. Why do we all have voicemail to record messages from phone calls, but no message when people come to your front door? You know, I knock on the door. I've taken the time to come to somebody's front door. There's no way to leave them a message that I was there. Interesting, right? Just asking questions. These are weird questions. Wondering why. Why don't business guys wear hats anymore, even when it's freezing in the winter? You know, 40 years ago, they all wore hats to stay warm in the cold winter. But nobody. Have you ever seen a business hat? How long has it been since you saw a man in a business hat? Yeah. Some of the younger ones are wearing stocking caps, right?
Yeah.
All right. So actively question the status quo. Gain an understanding of what the problem is and is not. So JetBlue. Let's take David Neeleman. Who's heard of David Neeleman and JetBlue? Okay. He was really touched by his LDS mission to Brazil, so much so that he felt very badly for the poor people of Brazil. When he came back to the United States, he didn't like how first class and business class and economy class were such a distinction on airplanes, and that the services were so different. You know, kind of. Who's ever seen that Seinfeld episode when Jerry's in the first class and Elaine is back in coach? You know what I'm talking about? So that really bothered David Neeleman, and that's why he started JetBlue. He said, why don't they do it this other way? Why didn't you, you know? And now we saw Southwest and JetBlue take over the airline industry. You know? Southwest, by the way, that makes everybody the same and keeps costs down. The market capitalization, so the number of shares of stock times the price of their stock of Southwest Airlines is worth more than all the other airline companies combined. Interesting, huh? So David Neeleman says, I sometimes find myself thinking the answer is so obvious that I wonder, why has no one else ever thought of this before? The best companies I see started are obvious, simple ideas. Some ones that in your brain you might think, well, that's so obvious, somebody has to be done that before already. Somebody must be thinking of that already. So, where do you find and start generating ideas from? It's usually from problems. So as you're observing the world and you're looking at the marketplace, you're saying all these problems. And the funny thing is, the bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. So you really want to focus on big ones. Let's see if this will pop up for me in the way I think it will. Okay, so this is one of the most famous venture capitalists in the world, Vinod Khosla, out of Silicon Valley. And is there sound here? Does anybody know if they'll hear sound? Okay, so what you're hearing him say is big problem, big opportunity. Seems simple to understand, but it's very important. Make sure you're not taking your precious time. By the way, the most valuable commodity you own is your time. Can't get it back, can't make new time. Every hour that you waste or let pass, every day that turns into week, turns into month, turns into years, that goes by, and you're frittering it away or whatever, you can't get back. So he's saying spend your time on big problems so there's bigger opportunities. Now, the solutions to those problems usually are quite simple, and they are either faster, better, or cheaper variants of the existing solutions. It's not very often somebody invents something brand new and creative from nothing. It's usually an incremental improvement that's faster, better, or cheaper. Now, let's do an exercise on this. I really want you to think about problems. So we're going to take 30 seconds again, and on that same piece of paper, I want you to think about the last day or two or week or whatever, and think when you got really mad at something, really ticked off, and it really bothered you. You said, why doesn't somebody fix that? Why isn't this better? Let's see what you can come up with. What really bothers you in society and life and business and process? Of course, UVU is practically perfect, so nothing here at all of any process that goes on university ever bugs you. Like the parking's awesome, right? And those new parking things, incredibly good, right? All right, 30 seconds, go. Okay, that's 30 seconds. Who's got something that bugs them, that they're mad at? Who wants to share? Anybody? Yeah?
I hate on the freeway that wrecks aren't cleared quickly, or when people pop a tire, they don't know what to do.
So accident management,
Yeah.
okay?
I hate it when a light turns green that the first car goes, then the second, then the third, instead of everyone going at the same time.
Okay, so how's Google solving both those problems? You know Google's driverless car. Have you heard of the driverless car? I've seen it. And I was offered a ride and I was scared. I didn't do it. Seriously, you go out, you go to Google headquarters, you get in the car, and you sit in the passenger seat, and it drives out to Highway 101, goes for a mile to the next exit, and gets off and drives you back. And there's nobody in there with you. It's going like 60 miles an hour on the freeway. I was scared. The Cover Time magazine this week, have you seen that? It says, can Google beat death? It says, this would be crazy, except it's Google. Google's mantra is they make solving big problems possible. And they're trying to solve big problems. Death's a problem. And so they think they can elongate human life substantially. And there's a whole article in Time magazine about it. It's really interesting. But the driverless car is crazy, though. But their vision is we won't need to own cars anymore. You just get on your Android, not an iPhone, Android, and you're going to get on and say, I want to go to the movies. I need to be driven 3 miles, and by the time you get your stuff and walk out, there's a car waiting for you there. You hop in, and it takes you to the movie theater. And there's just a community of cars. No accidents, and you get to work and talk while you're going. You can text and not get in trouble while you're in the car, and all this stuff. So that's their vision. Why would you need car? And their campus runs that way because they have bikes all over that nobody owns. There's just community bikes, and you'd go from building to building on a bike. And society could be that way with cars. And there'd be no accidents. You wouldn't have to wait for accident fix because they'd be there and they'd be maintained. And you wouldn't have dumb people that mess up everybody else by not going when they should, right? And things like that. So kind of interesting. What other big problems? What other problems? Yeah.
Lack of customer service with DirecTV and phone companies.
Bad customer service.
Yeah, because I sign up through a bundle and then it's like it's through CenturyLink, but it's DirecTV and they pass it back and forth to each other. It takes me an hour to get anything resolved.
It really makes you mad.
Yep.
Anybody else? Yeah. That's a common one among students. I've seen 20+ company ideas to solve that problem. And some of them have been very ingenious, from spray-on stuff to things that heat up the windshield half an hour in advance of when you set it for and stuff like that. Anything else? Yeah?
So with the internet, my brother just got a package, $50 for cable and high-speed internet. I'm paying $52 just for my internet alone. They won't let me switch to that package. Drives me nuts.
So it's just the way they're handling it. So these things, and one thing about students is you need to think bigger. My biggest problem with working with college students for a dozen years is that you think too small and you think too colloquial and you think only about your university life. You need to observe other things. Now you're familiar with university life because you're here all the time, but you got to think big. Think big. Because there are so many problems in the world and so many that could be solved by entrepreneurial ventures that just need to be launched and done. We'll never run out of that opportunity. Today in America, there are thousands of teams forming new companies, and they're going to make a boatload of money solving problems. It's a great society we live in, the freedom to do that. So my question is, though, when you say all these problems is, why doesn't somebody fix that? This makes me so mad. My question is, why aren't you the one fixing it? Why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you the one? Because I got to get my degree. Because I've got to go to the movies Friday night. Because I can't do that because my family taught me I'm not supposed to do that. I got to go get a job, right? All those reasons. There's all sorts. But I'm telling you, it's the people that say, I see this big problem, I'm going to go fix it. And they just go do it. It's really interesting. So when you express an idea in entrepreneurship, it needs to be expressed in a problem-solution format. The proper way to express an idea is to say, the problem in the marketplace is this, and my solution is this. You don't just spout out an idea and randomly go on and talk forever. It can be done in a couple sentences for each, one paragraph. And it should be easy enough for anyone to understand. So you have access to me after I lecture to a college class. If you want to email me and say, hey, I want to run a business idea past you, I will write you back if you don't do it properly and say, give me the problem solution statement, and then I'll critique it. And I'll do research on it. Now, I'm going to teach you how to even be better at doing that when you come talk to Shauna or anybody else about your ideas. But first of all, problem solution. Finding and shaping your ideas, this problem, and then deciding, implementing, accessing are the solution segments. But bottom line, example, problem. Giving a baby a bath in the sink is cumbersome, dangerous, not comfortable. You think that's a problem? Okay. Solution. Make a foam soft pad that is flat when stored and then can be made into a bowl shape for the sink. Sound like a good idea? Well, BYU students did that, and they sell 10 million plus a year in this. It's called Pudge. P-U-J. Ever heard of Pudge? Okay. They've been on the Rachel Ray show, the Ellen DeGeneres show, and they just said, man, we had a new baby. It's hard to work around in the sink, and the sink's hard, and this new baby in there. And they made this foam pad, and you go look it up, P-U-J, it's incredible. Their problem is they can't get enough financing because they have to order $2 million worth of inventory, and they're constantly growing and all this, so that's a nice problem to have. Not enough money to fulfill all the orders, right? Because then you can go to somebody and say, I've got all these orders, can you help me? Yeah, I can help you do that. So one student at BYU also came up with a pain wall, said, I'm going to put my pains I find up there and put them up on an internet system, and then we can all talk about solutions to these pains. It was kind of interesting. So one way to do that. Now let me tell you about how, when you come up with an idea, so if I had this idea for Pudge, problem solution, now how can I tell if this idea is worthy of my time to pursue? If it's a good opportunity. Well, the absolute definitive book on this topic is one called The New Business Road Test by John Mullins. And he basically says what entrepreneurs and executives should do before launching a lean startup. And part of that book is teaching that there's 7 different domains you have to look at. You can see here the market domain, the industry domain, the sustainable advantage domain, and the target segment benefits and attractiveness domain. And then there's 3 team domains about your team that's launching. So this is about the team, and this is about the industry that it's in. Okay? And you look at that and you say, how does it measure up in all those? An example, if I were to take the industry attractiveness domain and dive down into it, they're going to use the 5 forces model, which is a legendary model in saying how good is an industry for a business. And it has 5 forces, the most important one being rivalry among existing firms, but also who's got the strength in negotiating with suppliers, who's got the strength in negotiating with buyers. Does the buyer have strength over you, the company, or you over the buyer? If you only have one supplier of all the stuff you need to put your widget together, that's a problem. You want 1,000 suppliers so you can get cheap commodity pricing and pit them against one another. If all of your revenue is going to come from one customer as opposed to 1 million customers, that's a problem. Because if they cancel, you're dead. Right? So this is why Google's so valuable. How many customers do they have? Okay? If they lose today 50,000 users, will they even notice it? Okay, so it's interesting. How many potential entrants? How many substitute products are there? And well, again, what's the rivalry among existing firms? When you look at this 5 forces model, and I don't have time to go into it, I'm going to skip through all this. You're looking at all this, you'll say, okay, that industry is one that we could go into. And so there's things to look at. Now, I want to get past this, if I can. I have too much today. I do a matrix and I measure everything up when I think of an idea and I score it. But this is, I'll send anybody that emails me and asks for this. This is a spreadsheet I made up using what I look at in a company and what I measure an idea by. I look at market demand, market size, margin analysis. For instance, margins. Do they have high margins, moderate margins, or low margins? Then I look at barrier to entry, capital requirement, recurring revenue model, and headcount need. I do a weighted sum, score this, and I get a score. And this is just me. I made it for myself because this is my life's work of measuring ideas, and I put it into here, and this is a quick way. So if I got 5 business ideas that I like, I can measure them against one another, and one can emerge as the stronger one. In my classes at BYU, I use this, and we get lots of ideas germinating at the beginning of the semester, and we use something like this to say, what are the best ideas to spend our time on as student entrepreneurs? Now, let me tell you in the last closing minutes, and then I'll take Q&A after we dismiss, and Shauna said some of you need to go, so that's fine, but I'll stay here for any Q&A. But I want to share this with you. When you go to Shauna or me or anybody, a mentor, and say, hey, what do you think of my idea? Is this a good one? Before you come to us, you should do these 2 things. You should go to Google and spend 20 solid straight minutes with every keyword combination you can possibly think of to see who is doing what you think is not happening. The worst experience I have, and this happens 90% of the time, is when students come to me and take my time and say, I got this incredible idea. It's incredible. I'm so scared to even tell you about it. And then they finally trust me because I'm not into stealing ideas. Most people aren't, by the way. I don't want to work as hard as you need to work to make a company go, right? That's your 80-hour weeks for 7 straight years. Okay, I'm not going to do that. Okay, I want to invest in you maybe, and on your back make money because you're working hard. That's how it works. I'm not going to steal your idea. I want your idea to be great, and I want you to run with it. But what you do is you come to me with an idea, and I turn around to Google, and in less than 30 seconds, I find 10 companies in the last 2 years that have started doing the exact same thing, and they've received $10 million in funding each. That's a problem. It's validating that your idea was a good idea, but right now it's not a good business opportunity for you because you're way behind. And so you need to do that. 9 out of 10 times when students come to me with an idea, I shoot it down because of what I learned in 2 minutes of Googling. You need to do it for at least 20 minutes. I'm really good at it, and I can shoot most ideas down really big time. So you just got to be prepared for that. And you should do that yourself. If I write you back and say, well, have you heard of any of these 5 competitors? And you say, no, I never found those. Then I'm going, is this a person who could run a company who can't spend the time Googling, looking up competitors? Worries me, right? So you got to do that. Lastly, freepatentsonline.com. I've had many cases where people have spent $30,000 in 2 years of their lives developing a physical, tangible product, and then I go to Free Patents Online and find that their idea was patented 10 years ago. Happens all the time. So you got to check that out too, because that's a problem. You don't want that to happen to you either. So in closing, if you can be with me, I just want to say that if the idea is out there, it's not always a reason to kill an idea. Shows that other smart people are pursuing it, and the first mover often has arrows in their back, meaning, okay, 2 companies are pursuing this idea they started 6 months ago. Maybe they're cutting the pathway for me, and I'll be the winner. That happens too. So there's exceptions to some of these rules. It's all about execution, and this is the last thing I'll leave with you. All this talk today about ideas and opportunities, entrepreneurship is 1% idea, 99% execution.